The West Puget Community Connection Podcast. This is where we learn about the people of our community. We learn what they do, and more importantly, why they do it. Subscribe by email at westpugetcommunityconnection.com. We look forward to learning more about you. The West Puget Community Connection Podcast is brought to you in part by mywebdesignservices.com. Quick, easy, affordable websites that look amazing across all devices. For a quote or to get started today, visit mywebdesignservices.com. Welcome to the West Puget Community Connection Podcast, where we learn about the people in our community, what they do, and more importantly, why they do it. Our mission is to stimulate community engagement by creating a sense of community and rapport. We do that through interviews and storytelling with locals. You can listen to the podcast for free with unlimited streaming on our homepage at westpugetcommunityconnection.com. Contact us if you're interested in advertising or being featured on the show. And now, without further ado, we bring you this episode of the West Puget Community Connection Podcast.
Hello everyone, this is Vincent Alexander. I'm the host of the show, and today we welcome Inka Linn. Inka is a resident of Port Townsend. This is her second year living here in Port Townsend, and I really don't know much else about her aside from that, so I'll just go ahead and go straight to Inka, and we'll learn more about her. Hi, Inka.
Hello. How are you
Welcome.
doing?
Yeah, doing well this morning. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, enjoying this kind of cooler weather today.
Sweet. And so you've been in Port Townsend for about 2 years. I think it was last March you moved here?
Yeah, coming up on, about a year and a half was when I moved up here.
Sweet. Would you like to start at the beginning of your story and share your whole story and let us know how you ended up in Port Townsend and what you're doing here?
Sure. So do you want me to start from my childhood or just kind of briefly from where I ended up?
It's really up to you how far back you'd like to go with your story. If you feel that something from your childhood is relevant to who you've become and what shaped your values, then I'd like to hear more about that, because that helps me understand you as a person, Inka. But it's totally up to you, the content that you'd like to share on this call.
Okay, sure. Well, I think the main reason I moved up to Port Townsend in March of last year was for the sailing community. There was a lot of other things that interested me in Port Townsend as well, but really the main draw that made this area stand out from other areas was the sailing community, and that is something that does go back to my childhood. I just always wanted to learn how to sail since I was probably about 9 years old. I went out on this little catamaran in Southern Oregon on a school trip, and it just kind of ignited this passion inside of me. Right around that age, I kind of had a hard time fitting in with school. I went to an alternative private school, homeschooling collective, and just experienced some different bullying and challenges with the social environment, and so that was kind of happening on that field trip. And but when I went into this boat that one of the students' dads had brought, it just was ignited something inside of me, and ever since that point I wanted to learn how to sail. And so I actually my mom is from Norway. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but she's grew up in Norway and moved to the United States a bit over 30 years ago, and so I have citizenship there as well, and so I guess there's kind of a long winding path that led me to go to Norway, and I'm happy to talk more about it, but I ended up going to school in Norway for sailing, spending 2 years at a folk. They have a system there called folk high schools. It's like a 1-year hands-on school that a lot of people do before they go to college and after they graduate high school, and there's no exams. It's all about kind of passing on folk traditions and hands-on knowledge as opposed to like more academic book learning.
Right.
So I went to a place called Fosen, Fosen, Folk High School, around near Trondheim, and I went there to learn how to do traditional sailing. So that's kind of one of the main reasons I moved up to this area, because when I was moving back to the United States, spent some time back in Southern Oregon in my hometown, but when I was kind of ready to move on from there, I wanted to find an area that had a similar, just some similar vibes as far as the sailing community, and there's a really strong, wooden boat and traditional sailing community here, and also just a lot of Scandinavian influence in general. So
neat. Okay, cool. So just right at an early age of 9, the first time you stepped onto that catamaran, you were instantly kind of caught up in the experience. It sounds like pretty intrigued by the experience, and so you always had this just sort of natural interest in sailing, and so that's what brought you to Port Townsend. That makes sense, seeing as we're a port town.
Totally.
Do you have any connections with the Wooden Boat School? Did you go to school there at all?
I did not go to school there. I bought a boat a couple months ago that was built by the boat school. I have different friends who have been there, and so I would say I have some kind of tenuous connections, but it's definitely something I'm interested in building more connections around. Not necessarily that I'm interested in learning how to build boats, but
well, I'm curious what your experience has been in Port Townsend since you got here. When you landed here, what was that like? Did you come alone? Did you have a friend in town? How did you connect? How did you survive in Port Townsend?
Sure. So I came up to the Wooden Boat Festival in 2017 on my own, and I was dating the guy I was dating at the time had spent, I think he lived here for a while and had friends and connections here, and so I came up here on my own in 2017 and came to the boat festival and just kind of was very struck, even just the first view you get on the 101 by near the canal where you start seeing, just the water was just kind of super interesting and beautiful. So that was kind of when I was like already looking and interested in this area, and I even had like interest in Washington and a lot of dreams about being in Washington like years and years ago. So it was kind of on my radar, but then, the guy I was seeing was like talking pretty highly of the area, and we came up here for a visit in January of 2018, and just kind of got some really good feelings about it. So we moved up here together a couple months later, I guess. And we've since separated and stuff, but that was kind of my introduction to the community, was partially through him and partially through just doing my own thing. I got tuned into the Maritime Center and did some work through them, and also brought my own business up here, my tailoring business. So.
Okay. So can we hear a little bit more about your connection with the Maritime Center and what you did working with boats over there before we talk about your catering service?
Or tailoring.
Oh, tailoring service.
Yeah.
Oh, neat. Okay. So
Sure. So at the Maritime Center, I haven't been like a full-time employee, but I've done, different work for them throughout the time I've been here, various different things. The main program that I've been involved in is their longboat program. They have 2 longboats, which are replicas of the longboats that I believe his name was Captain Cook, I think is his name. One of the earlier explorers and traders, or I can't remember the exact story of it, but they had some larger ships along this coast, and then they had these longboats that they would do more like smaller excursions and, get to land in and stuff. And so they have a program at the Maritime Center where they take primarily 7th graders out in these longboats. They're dipping lug rigs. They have 2 masts and really interesting boats, all wooden, no engines, just oars. So the very, the boats that I sailed in Norway also do not have engines. They're all sail and oar powered. They're traditional Norwegian craft, and so it's a very translatable way of thinking about moving around in a boat and using, human and wind power. So I've been a mate, first mate on some of those excursions or in that program, I guess.
Neat. That sounds cool. So you have a tailoring business, I heard you say.
Yeah, I do. That's the main thing that I do right now.
Huh. Now, how did you get involved with tailoring?
So, I guess that's been something that's in one way or another been a really big part of my life for a long time, but also has kind of a certain point where I remember something sparking my interest in sewing in general. And that was when I was a child. There was I think I helped out with some kind of one of our family friends helped them out in some way. They were putting on some event, or I can't remember exactly the details. But anyways, this family friend was really grateful for my help, even though I was probably just 7 years old or even less. So I can't remember how helpful I must have been. But she gave me this huge box of cloth scraps, all bits of velvet and cloth and different ribbon and all these different things. And I probably spent the next 2 years using every single bit of those scraps, and I made them into patchwork skirts and pillows and blankets and little garments for my dolls and stuffed animals. I mean, I just made all kinds of different things. And so that was, Norway has a very textile-rich legacy and tradition. So I've grown up with a lot of influence around textiles from my mom, but that was kind of the moment where I really remember just diving into this world on my own. And after that, I also took sewing lessons for the first 8 years of school. We had, like I mentioned before, a pretty a homeschooling kind of alternative schooling collective, and so we had sewing lessons and embroidery lessons, and
how convenient.
That was, and so that also was really, I learned a lot through that. And so when before I went to Norway for going to sailing, I actually spent a year at Oregon College of Art and Crafts studying drawing and painting. And just at the end of it, just felt it was a really good program, but that I really wanted something more hands-on and more traditional learning. And that's what kind of propelled me to go to Norway for sailing for a couple of years. And there was some textile things there too. I mean, knitting is kind of a Norwegian pastime, so if you don't knit, you're kind of scorned, or not necessarily that strong, but everybody knits. Everybody young, old people, everybody knits.
That'll be my image of Norway now, people walking down the streets knitting.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's like, you can buy postcards of girls in traditional dress, like herding sheep knitting at the same time, you know?
Oh my gosh, wow, it really is like they knit.
They knit, yeah, it's a thing. But anyways, I was, like I said, I went to this folk school for 2 years studying sailing, and I loved it. And I did learn some textile things there, but mostly it was, just a lot of outdoorsy things. And at the end of that, when I was looking at continuing my higher education, kind of just felt that like sailing is it's very like physical. It's very, I don't know, if I had to characterize it, I would say to me it feels more masculine than feminine, and that's not like genderizing it at all. It's just like I feel it expresses my masculine side more when I do it. It's very like hands-on and rugged. And after doing that for 2 years, I just wanted to do something that kind of expressed like my more feminine side. And so when I was looking at going to higher education, I've always been very crafty and an artist, and I was looking at either doing woodworking or traditional textiles, and I just kind of felt like I needed an outlet for something that wasn't so rugged and kind of rough. So that's why I chose textiles. Basically, it was just because I wanted to, I don't know, I just needed to connect back in with my more feminine side, I guess. So I studied textiles for, I guess, 3 years, like a year and a half in South Norway at I changed the name of it. It's the University College of Southeast Norway, I think is what it's called now. It's called something different when I went there. But they have a program that's folk art, Norwegian textiles. So I studied that, and then I actually did an exchange program to the National College of Art and Design in Ireland, in Dublin, doing a textile program there, and I just fell in love with the program there, and so I actually ended up transferring and doing my degree year and my thesis and getting my degree from SCAD in Dublin. And so that's kind of where my education is both in sailing and in textiles. And when I came back to the States after I graduated and after spending a summer sailing in Iceland, then I came back to Southern Oregon and just thought I would, try my hand at tailoring and kind of just put out the word to the community that I was available for that kind of work. I got laid off from a little nanny gig that I had because the woman I think she was laid off from her job, so she didn't need me anymore. And so I was just like, well, I have a degree in textiles, like I may as well put it to use and see what happens. And so I just started putting it out to the community and got several jobs. And then when I moved up here some months later, I just brought that with me and kept advertising, and now I've been in business for officially, I was sort of starting to do things with it and kind of ramping up, but I got my business license in May of last year, so over a year I've been officially in business, and it's just really grown. I'm pretty much like constantly booked out like 3 weeks now.
Wow.
And so I just have
a market for that in Port Townsend. I'm so glad to hear that, because a lot of people struggle with finding work here or how to sustain themselves, and some people come and then they don't last and they'll leave. So it's wonderful to hear a success story.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, I still could maybe I do 1 day a week nannying, and that's just to have something more stable to count on,
Sure, a little bread and butter.
And then, and just to, just to not have too much stress, because that will impact my quality of work and my mind as well. But
too much stress from like if you were nannying too frequently, too many days. More just like that. If I was doing trying to rely on my business full time for all of my financial needs, it just adds a level.
it would be too stressful. It kind of adds a level of like franticness that
insecurity. Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely think that that's in store where I can do that and feel comfortable with it. But right now, having that 1 day a week nannying just helps me feel
stable. Yeah,
just more stable and comfortable.
That makes sense.
So, yeah,
and I do the same thing with my business, so that makes so much sense.
But there's definitely a market here for it. There's a lot of people who, I think it's just part of the culture up here. People have an ideal of repair and making things last and not just throwing them away if there's something that they don't like about it. So, and then there's a lot of wedding and formal wear, and so I get all kinds of things from patching a little hole to sewing on, changing a garment to altering wedding dresses and doing bustles to even just like custom work where someone says, I want this, can you make it? And I say, okay, and we, work through that. So a lot of different things.
That's neat. It sounds like there's a lot of variety in what you do because like every client and every piece that's brought to you is a unique experience. It sounds like it would be different. So does this like really meet your need for creativity?
I would say that it helps. It's when I get especially custom garments, that really helps. A lot of what I do is fairly just everyday wear, and so it is creative in the sense that each piece is like a puzzle, and if you have to take it apart and put it back together again, you have to use your creative thinking. But I also do a fair amount of my own kind of sewing for myself to get, be more creative. And when I'm done with my work day, then I also do a lot of creativity for myself, kind of just more hobby-ended. But I do miss being more artistic sometimes, and I have been branching out and working on like a clothing line, so doing like some product development. And I'd like to get back into...
Yeah, tell us about it. What's in your heart there? What is it that you're wanting to do? What would bring you more fulfillment?
Well, so if I'm going to do a clothing line, and I've already started with various prototypes and stuff, but I feel really like ethically good about doing tailoring because it's, it's kind of helping keep things going for longer, essentially. And so it's keeping clothes out of the landfill for longer and helping people to feel more comfortable in their garments, more fitted. And, so I feel really good about that. If I'm going to start producing something and manufacturing something, I have a little bit of hang-ups around it just as in terms of sustainability and stuff. So if I decide to really go for it with that, it's going to, I would really want it to be like all organic and, material that's as locally sourced as possible. I've been in touch with some different projects that are happening in the kind of West Coast area as far as the linen and the hemp industry, and kind of like it seems to be that there's going to be more U.S. grown and milled and woven textiles that hopefully will be organic in the next, hopefully 10 years anyways. But that's my like ideal vision, is to be able to source cloth that is grown and milled and woven here in the United States, preferably on the West Coast, because so much of it is coming from overseas. Definitely all biodegradable fabrics, because that's a huge problem for, our oceans especially. It's just like microfibers from synthetic clothes. Every time you wash your clothes, they fluff off a whole bunch of tiny particles of plastic, and that much of that ends up in the water supply, which goes to the ocean. So,
wow.
And then just well made too. Clothes that are made to last, as opposed to fast fashion today, which is just made to fall apart and be thrown away, really.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a pretty clear vision of what you'd like to do that's in line with your values, in terms of like you want to do something organic, you want to do something locally sourced, not international shipping, something biodegradable, and something quality. That sounds like it definitely would harmonize with the values of Port Townsend. And there's probably a lot of people out here who would like to see you do something like that and help you do it. I hope you get all the support you need.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's the fashion market is a pretty competitive market to get into, and I'm not in a super big rush with it. I'm totally fine kind of taking my time, and that's part of my ethos too, is really spending the time with the product development so that I come up with a garment that is really well thought through and has been tested and been, worn for a while by somebody and kind of has feedback back of like, okay, is it comfortable? Where is it? Is it starting to wear thin in some area that we can reinforce? All those sort of things.
Neat. So have I seen some of your advertisements for your tailoring business around town or on Facebook? I seem to recall seeing something along those lines. Have you done any advertising?
I have, and I think that's how you first got in touch with me, was from one of my flyers that I had up a while ago. I've tried various different methods of advertising, but I think that's how you found me first, was through a flyer that I had up somewhere. I'm not sure where it was. But.
Yeah, that makes sense. I frequent all the flyer boards in town, and just to see, connect with everyone and see what's going on out there.
Yeah.
Neat. Okay. So your future, your vision for your future. It sounds like you have this in your heart, to start a quality, sustainable clothing line. Do you see anything? Is there any other pieces of that vision that you'd like to share with us for your future and the life that you're trying to create for yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, I'm just kind of dabbling with the clothing line right now. I'm definitely putting energy towards it. I'm not stuck on that being my end-all future plan. But I'm definitely interested and curious and inspired about that. I would say that there's a lot of other potential ideas in the pipeline, one of which is to start a textile school, or even multi-faceted kind of skills school. I was very inspired by the school that I went to in Norway. And I would love to, there's already a lot of, I think, potential here with, there's the Port Townsend School of the Arts, there's Cedar Root Folk School, there's the Maritime Center, the Woodworking School, the Boat Building School. So there's a lot of existing organizations and things like that.
Existing organizations. Okay.
Yeah, that you could maybe do some even cross-pollination with, or even just it shows that there's already a culture for and an interest in traditional skills. And yeah, and so that is one thing I have thought of, because I learned a lot of really awesome techniques when I was studying in Europe. And so starting a textile institute or there's Cedar Root Folk School, but they just do sort of short-term classes. So, and I think this is something that's, maybe farther down the line, but I'm interested in teaching more and potentially starting a school.
That's really neat, Inka. So,
yeah.
So your experience at school in Norway and Dublin was so inspirational to you in your life that now you'd like to give that same experience to other people. You want to create a place that teaches people how to have these skills.
I think
you want to make that contribution to young people's lives or something like that.
Absolutely. Especially I was especially struck and influenced on that train of thought by the folk school in Norway, because it is so hands-on and because it gave me so much and influenced me so much in my path forward. And we don't really have that kind of system in place in this country. There aren't very many schools like that where young people can go and learn traditional skills, hands-on things, and not have to do tests and not have to do book learning. And my sailing teacher, he said to me one time, you are a tradition bearer, and he was speaking in regards to sailing, but that once you learn a skill, especially a skill that has to be shown, that can't be learned in books, like sailing, you can't read a book and learn how to sail. You have to be on the water, on the boat, with people who know how to sail, and it's something that is sort of shown with your body and explained, but you can't just learn it from a book. And the same is said for sewing, or for a lot of the folk arts and folk crafts. It's in that passed from person to person. So once you've had something passed to you, then it's sort of partially your responsibility to make sure that it doesn't end with you, but that it continues to be passed on.
Oh, so yeah, there's sort of a responsibility to keep the skill and the tradition alive and keep passing it on to the next generation or another person who can use it and pass it along again.
Exactly.
Neat.
So I would say that's one kind of potential direction I could see myself going in with a school, also like you said, with the clothing line. And then I'm also, still interested in moving forwards with my sailing abilities, and that's something I've kind of thought about as well, like maybe starting a program. There's like a really strong Scandinavian influence in this area. There's the Sons of Norway lodges. There's different boat builders who build traditional Norwegian crafts. And so, I'm curious if potentially networking with different organizations, I could put together a program that teaches traditional Norwegian sailing as well.
Okay, so I think I'm hearing a request for the community there. Is that something you'd like to do? Is connect with people at all these different boat schools and see if there's some way to, like you said, cross-pollinate or cooperate? Are you looking to sit down with people in the community and be creative with them?
I would love to. Yeah, I've been in touch with a man who lives up on Anacortes and does some boat building there, and I've been in touch a little bit with the Maritime Center and floated that idea there, and they were super positive about that potential. There's only so many hours in the day, so I've kind of put it on ice. But yeah, if there's anyone who wants to get in touch with me and continue this idea, I would love to.
Okay, great. So I'm sure the listeners of the podcast have heard that, and hopefully if anybody knows anyone over at any of the boat schools or any of these different sorts of resources, maybe they can put you guys in touch. How would someone get in touch with you? How would you prefer to be contacted? By phone or by email or?
Well, you can always Google me if you forget what I'm going to say next, but you can always Google me. I have a website. It's inkalinn.com, and I have all my contact information on there. Inka, I-N-K-A, Linn, L-I-N-N. But yeah, I have my website has an email on it, so that's info, I-N-F-O, @inkalinn.com. My phone is also listed on there. So any of those methods, email or phone, is fine.
Perfect. All right, so just go to the inkalinn.com, and there you go. You can contact Inka Linn, and hopefully some sort of cooperation or some sort of creativity can happen in the community here to help move these ideas forward with starting a sustainable clothing line, or also a skilled school with textiles and sailing and boat work and that kind of thing. I'm sure there's tons of people in the city that will be excited to hear that. There's just a lot of people in this area that are very artistic and crafty, and they want to cooperate and get something going. So I'd be curious to hear if anything does come out of this podcast, if you get any connections and things start growing. I'll probably want to check in with you in the future and see how things are developing.
Absolutely.
So do you have any other interests that you would like to share with us, things that people might be connection points for you, like, I don't know, anything at all that kind of excites you or that you're interested in, like books that you've read, courses that you've taken, or if you're into art or movies or anything at all?
Yeah, sure. I have a fiddle that I don't play hardly at all, but I would like to get back into. I also love to dance, so I've been wanting to get more into the dancing community here. As far as books or things like that, nothing's really jumping out at me at the moment. But I love going on adventures and hiking, and also just sailing. I mean, I finally, after, solidly putting energy towards wanting to buy myself a boat for the last 12 years and been dreaming about it, I finally managed to make that happen. So, yeah,
Sweet. What kind of
think
boat?
That's everything.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
So I heard fiddle. You like to play your fiddle, and you'd like to play. You haven't been playing your fiddle enough, I hear. You've been wanting to do more of that. Maybe someone might want to jam with you. You like to dance. I know there's lots of opportunities to dance in this town. Adventures and hiking and sailing.
Absolutely.
So you bought a boat. Do you want to tell us anything about? Do you want to tell us anything about the boat or the experience of buying it, or what that's like for you to own a boat?
Sure. Yeah, it's a pretty cool boat. It's one of 5 that were built and designed in Port Townsend. Ed Luchard is the designer, and they were all 5 built by the Wooden Boat School, and they're called truants. Truant is a child or a young person who skips school, basically. And
Perfect.
and from my understanding, the reason they were named that is because when they were being built, they were so much fun to sail that the boat students were skipping school to go sailing. So
that's awesome. I love that.
They were designed for the Puget Sound area with the currents and the winds sort of in mind that are in this area. It is a gaff-rigged boat. Mine is the first one that was built, first of 5, and mine is also the only one that does not have a motor. It just has sails and 2 oars. So
Wow.
It's a wooden boat. It's 26 foot long,
Wow, 26 feet.
It has a mainsail, a foresail, and a topsail.
Sweet. And does it have a name?
It just is called Truant because it's the first one ever built. People keep asking me if I'm going to name it properly. I feel like I need to get to know it better before I change any name on it, but maybe someday it will have a different name.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on getting your boat that you had dreamed about getting for so long.
Thank you.
I have dreams of getting something, and I'm still waiting, so I'm pretty excited to hear that you accomplished that and you're getting to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it just goes to show that if you just are persistent with what you want and just don't give up and just keep at it, then you can make it happen. So
that is so true. I really
keep
believe
at it.
Persistence is a key to success. If anything you want to be successful at, you got to keep at it until it happens.
Absolutely.
Let's see. We've got to know you a little bit here, and a lot of my questions have already been answered. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the community, or do you think we've done a pretty good job here of introducing you to the community?
I feel like you've done a pretty good job, honestly. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and share and just to speak with you, and I'm totally interested and excited to see if some networking connections can be made through your podcast. So thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much. And yeah, exactly the same. I hope that this community members here in Port Townsend will hear this podcast and they'll take an interest in you and what you're doing, and that there will be some inspiration, some spark, some energy, and I'll be interested to hear back in the future of your journey and how it grows, how things develop. For sure.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you, Inka, and maybe we'll have to check back in with you in a year or two and see if your school's developed or just what direction you've gone in and what you've decided to do from here forward.
Absolutely. Well, feel free to keep the connection going.
Okay, Inka. Well, thank you so much for your time this morning, and peace be with you.
Okay, thank you so much. Enjoy your day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the West Puget Community Connection podcast. Be sure to catch the next episode. Sign up for our email list at westpugetcommunityconnection.com, and you'll be notified when new episodes are published. And if you're interested in advertising or being featured on the show, you can contact us through our website as well, westpugetcommunityconnection.com. The West Puget Community Connection podcast is brought to you in part by mywebdesignservices.com. Quick, easy, affordable websites that look amazing across all devices. For a quote or to get started today, visit mywebdesignservices.com. The West Puget Community Connection podcast. This is where we learn about the people of our community. We learn what they do, and more importantly, why they do it. Subscribe by email at westpugetcommunityconnection.com. We look forward to learning more about you.